About 10 years ago, I was here presenting, and there was a gentleman that I met, and this guy that I met, let's call him Tom, I met him a very long time ago. It was only in about 2022 that he reached out and I got to know him better. I spent about, as you can see, 12 weeks mentoring him. That 12 weeks, we connected more. I learned more about his career. I'd been out of New Zealand for the last 10 years, only moved back recently. I'd been away. And Tom went through his mentoring process with me around his Power Platform career. The outcome of that was Tom became known globally as a power subject matter expert. He went deep on one area of the Power Platform, and he is known now globally for his skill in this particular area. He also became a Microsoft MVP. Here's the good one, doubled his salary. Like Tom. So why do I tell Tom's story? Because Tom's story is one of many stories of the 1,200 people I've helped mentor over the last couple of years around the Power Platform, and really how you develop your career in the Power Platform. Because if you've been involved in the Power Platform for any period of time, let's say 3 years, you'll all of a sudden realize, where's my career going? What's the next step for me? Am I going to start my own business? Am I going to go freelance? I'm going to stay working with partners? Am I going to work with end customers? There is a plethora of options, but I am constantly surprised that so many people don't know which way to turn or what is the next step that they need to take. Feel overwhelmed. And I constantly get this feedback of overwhelm, particularly with the speed that Microsoft is releasing vNext, right? There's always something new coming and bubbling up. Another common theme I come across in mentoring is this imposter syndrome. Be people smarter in the room than me. I've been doing this for 20 years. I was the first customer in New Zealand to implement MS CRM as a customer. Over 20 years ago. Microsoft first sold it to my company that I was working for in New Zealand at that time. Other thing is a fast pace. Everything is moving faster. If you thought that, Power BI, for example, was fast moving, where they were releasing multiple times a month new features, and why Power BI became a massive deal around the world. Now we're in the area of AI, and if you can keep up, you're a legend, because every day I read new changes. I am updating my knowledge around AI, because it's not just Microsoft now, it's Anthropic, it's OpenAI, it's Facebook. Many companies now are releasing their view on AI, and all of it is an enabler for you if you practice and use it. The opportunity, of course, is that if you can become a master at learning, and then make that your primary skill to learn as much as possible. But to do that, you're going to need to create a framework of learning. You're going to need to create a methodology that works for you, that allows you to consume a phenomenal amount of information and apply it. And I'm not talking about going to Microsoft Learn and starting a course and working your way through that. That's one piece. But there is so much more when it comes to learning and applying it to your career. And then the importance of adaptation. You need to pivot. Nobody is in a career that's forever. I remember when I was first doing my certifications back in my Dynamics days. In fact, my first certification I did was NT4 certification. So back in the servers time frame. And people would ask back then, is this certification for life? Right? Back then, yeah, of course it will be, until the next version came out, and then its life was dead. Not your life, but the life of that certification. So this is, once again, scaling at a phenomenal rate, and your ability to adapt to the changes that are happening in the workforce will set you up for a very successful career. Now I'm 52 years young, and that means I'm probably at the latter part of my career by some people's estimations. I feel like I'm only at half time. I easily have another 40 years of my career in me. And so when you start looking long term like that, you start to change about how you don't need to learn everything today, even though I've said you need to be able to create a learning model to operate or paradigm to operate in. But you all of a sudden realize that, you know what, I could switch my career today and take a totally different trajectory and become amazing at it. Right? There's research showing that within the next 50 years, we'll probably solve every medical issue known in the world. And therefore, the potential to live to 150 years is going to become possible. I'm down for that. Perhaps I'll work for another 100 years yet. Who knows? But as we progress here, I want to give you some strategies, and I'm going to try this tool. Like, you know, Hamish was a master at it. I've never used this Menti tool before. And being that I didn't have a split screen, I don't know if it was going to work. But anyhow, let me give you a QR code. See, look at that. I've already failed. That I crack again. Show QR code. There you go. The biggest challenge you face in your Power Platform career. You could change the word Power Platform for Copilot career. You could change that word Copilot for your Fabric career. You could change that word Power Platform for Dynamics 365. Remember, I came from a Dynamics 365. If you aren't aware, Dynamics 365 is just an app that runs on the Power Platform. Not all of them. Definitely know people can have me on about that. But okay, accessibility of tools, great. Are you talking about free trials, not accessible, or the ability to? Yeah, good. Thought so. How to start? What else have we got? Change, breaks. Oh, I want to talk about breaks. Does anyone want to talk about breaks? What do they mean by breaks? Career breaks? What do you mean by that? Anyone want to know what you mean by breaks?
Well, I didn't put breaks, so I put changing platform. Just the platform changes constantly, and things do break, right? And that's
yeah, product break. Yeah, valid. Decommissioning of stuff. Yeah, end of life. Yep, it happens. Mate, I remember the old COM object for Outlook, embedded Outlook. Beautiful tool till it went away. Gave us all that offline access we needed. Okay, got a lot of great feedback there. I want to talk about strategy one, how to accelerate your learning. I read this book a while back, and feel free to go out and grab it. It's called Second Brain. You need to create a second brain for your life. And why this resonated for me is that I've spent the last 15 years collecting every single document that has ever happened in my life. Every email, every medical record, every receipt. And it has been going into my second brain because one day I knew that technology will get there and I'd be able to feed it all my history and say, can you tell me who I am? Can you understand me? Can you help me be better at who I am? And so now I have this partially in. This is a screenshot straight out of my OneDrive. And you can see here I have inbox, projects, assets, resources, and archives. And everything in my life go into a range of this framework. Everything goes into the inbox. I set aside time and I allocate the inbox out to various folders and I work on them. If I was to double click on projects right now, you would see the New Zealand Business Application Summit folder, and in that would be all the assets that were sent as part of this and was also my presentation that was developed. You'll see the start of my presentation, which started in Word, my entire script written out is 7,000 words for this presentation, and then you'll see it break down to ultimately become slides in the process that I go through to creating a presentation. Right, those assets I can go back to in 5 years' time, and they will still be there. So if someone's like do that presentation again, I can do the presentation again because I've got a framework for it. And all I'm trying to do is our brains are great at innovation, coming up with new ideas. They're not good at retention. And particularly, ask my wife, she will tell you, I don't remember very much. I mean, she tells me I remember more than I give myself credit. But, you know, when I go up and I meet someone, I'm like, I know I've seen this person before. I know them. They know me. They say, like, because my voice is out there with my podcast with over 600 episodes, people come up at conferences and say, hey, and they talk to me like they really know me. And I'm like, so I need a second brain to collect all this. I can't wait till I have some type of wearable that when I look at you, I go, Ben, how are you, man? Remember last time we talked, it will just prompt me and give me the right things to talk about. But anyhow, this feeds into micro learning. In fact, I'm working on an AI model at the moment that will allow me to take all the inputs that I get every day through channels like LinkedIn posts. Charles Lumana puts up a post about the Wave 2 release. Bang, that needs to go in the summary of that into an input. And I've set aside time each day, and I'll talk about this in strategy too, to how do I consume massive volumes of information that are not all just in a formal learning course. So these are white papers, these are YouTubes, these are, you name it, right, that are coming in. These are courses, these are LinkedIn learning courses, these are Microsoft learning courses that I should be doing. Reading, writing, goal setting, practicing, experimenting, all make up part of your micro learning strategy. I've heard it before, see that. And you need to create a second brain by using tools like Evernote was my day one tool. I use OneNote, and I use AI. Right? And I'm particularly using ChatGPT, this functionality, is that I'm creating an automation that ingests all this information in. So I can just fire an email to an email address, gets ingested in. And then I can go at any time during the day on my phone device, and I go, I've got 5 minutes. What do I need to know now? And out of all those inputs that are coming, it's saying, hey, consume this bit of content. Like I get an email called Superhuman each day into my inbox. And it's around all the changes that are happening across the industry and AI. And the problem with that email, or the goodness of the email, it has, 5 new tools that you need to know. It then has the sponsored section that you need to know. There's my mouth straight out. Thank you. It knows all the, so that structure of the email, right? Then it will allow me to extract out and go, listen, he's got 2 sections in that email. One is other AI news, which is a summary of a whole bunch of things. And then he has got the main news story of the page. The rest of the newsletter are all sponsored links. I don't give a rip about that. I got time to go through that. I wanted this format. Now I'm dyslexic as well. So for me, reading screens and screens and screens of stuff is difficult. Listening to it is much easier. Listening to it at twice speed, or sometimes up to 3 times the speed, maintaining comprehension, is how I do that. So AI, by the way, is infused into everything in my life. And it's so important that you stop talking about AI in theory and start to practice. I used to say at the start of the year, 5 prompts a day minimum. Now for me, it's around 5 prompts an hour. This week on Monday, I was in my greenhouse and I was planting a whole bunch of herb seeds. And you know what? Every time I picked up a packet, which I bought off Trade Me because I like unique seeds, and I just go and put on ChatGPT, I go to the voice function and I say, weird Latin name, what's the best way to propagate this from seed? One says goes 5 mil under the soil. Some says this needs light stratification, so leave it on top of the soil, press it with your finger. And it's just staying there up on my hydroponic system, and I'm just talking away to it as I'm doing this type of functionality. So I've permeated my entire life with AI. I'm practicing because I know agents are going to excite me. Now, strategy 1, active learning, right? Set up a daily routine where you're consuming learning. Make it part of your life. I highly suggest that you apply the 5-hour rule. In fact, I got so motivated with this off a call that I did earlier this week with people currently on my mentoring challenge, that I decided, and I do these stupid things on the spur of the moment, and I make big commitments to myself that in my personality type, I cannot drop. And what I mean by that is that about 75 days ago, I set a commitment to shoot 1 TikTok video every day for 100 days. And I put out to my alumni community that if anyone noticed I failed for 1 day, the first person that noticed, I'll pay them $1,000 for a miss. That's buying motivation, right? I've not missed a day for the last 75 days. And I'm now down in my end sprint. Why? I want to develop the skill of speaking to a camera and communicating via camera, because You like it or not, our future is going to be so much more camera centric than it has ever been. We thought lockdown was one thing. It's going to be much more camera centric in an AI driven world. So you need to get super comfortable in front of a camera at communicating down the lens of the camera and looking somebody in the eye and having a connection that can be done via camera. I want to get good at that, and I know I have to practice to do it. So at the start of this week, I set myself another 100-day challenge. This 100-day challenge is to apply the 5-hour rule, because I've done it on and off over my career, but I really want to apply it heavily now. So 5 hours a week, I'm going to learn something new. Brand new. This cannot be reading an email. This cannot be watching TikToks. This cannot be browsing any social media channel that you're into. This is solid learning. Deep learning, white papers. This is taking, I completed all the Copilot courses on LinkedIn this week. I'm now doing all the Copilot courses on Learn. Why have I all of a sudden become interested in it? By the way, when I turned my instance on, the last time I did a Copilot thing was when PVA first came out, and there was my old integration to my blog site when I first wrote it the day after Microsoft announced it in the apartment down the street just after I moved back to New Zealand from London. But I'm applying this now to every part of my life, ingesting and making sure I am learning something new. Why? Because I want it to be a muscle memory for me. I want it to be second nature, that I'm always learning, always consuming, always getting to the next level. Who came up with it? Bill Gates came up with it. Oprah Winfrey does it. There's a whole bunch of research done on this. 5 hours. You do 5 hours dedicated to learning every week to learning something new. You'll set yourself ahead. Strategy number 2, architect your success. Have you sat down and mapped out your career plan for the next 10, 15 years? Do you know where you're going? Or do you just wait till this job sucks and then go, shit, I need to look for a new one? Right? Or you wait because your company took a different strategic direction, said, you're out. Right? 2 companies I thought were the safest employers to work in the world before the pandemic or mid-pandemic. Microsoft and Google. My wife worked at Google for 10 years, so I had this kind of very inside look of it, and I've been working alongside Microsoft for the last 30 years. And what happened at the end of the pandemic? They started laying off legends inside their company because an accountant who was responsible to the shareholders said, we need to slash some costs. And what I noticed for the first time in my career is that really the concept of companies that are loyal to employees doesn't exist. Cool. When I was born up as a Gen Xer, you be loyal to your employer, you stay for a long time, you do your time, you'll do well. Bullshit. Right? You've got to craft your own career. So here is a thing called, the Gallup or Clifton's Strengths Finder. And this is my strengths. So my strongest strengths are around influencing people. Well, good. Right?
It doesn't say that.
No, I'm not trying to get into something dodge. And you can see I also executing and a relator. I relate to people, and I'm a strategic thinker. Right, are some of my areas of strength on this. I highly suggest you go and do this because I encourage everybody I mentor to do this, and they come back and go, wow, I cannot believe how accurate it describes me. And now start looking for jobs that match your strengths. Stop trying to solve your weaknesses. Play to your strengths. Right? When you go to a performance review and they go, you need to improve on this, you need to improve on that. You're like, I need to improve on you as my employer. Right? Change it up. The M professional. Now, M, I chose M. Right? You shouldn't be able to find anything else beyond M. M is for Mark. And that's why it's the M professional. I was brought up in consulting as a T professional. When I went to Australia, I worked for a management consulting company, and we had what we called T professionals, which meant you need to be broad across a bunch of stuff when talking with customers, but you need to be super deep in your subject matter expertise area. I say these days, you need to be super deep in 3 core areas for your career to excel. Number 1, you need to develop soft skills. In fact, a lot of people that I work with call these essential skills. How to work with people, how to communicate effectively, how to get your ideas to the right level of the organization. Hamish brought out some really interesting data there. Why people don't do ROI calculations? because they don't realize is that their biggest thing, oh, our company won't pay for that. Our company won't license premium licenses. Why? Because you have never created a business case internally that the executive understand to sign off and approve it. When people tell me they want to sit on basic licensing on the Power Platform, I'm just like, you are ignorant, right? Because this has got nothing to do with money and cents. This has to do with understanding the risk profile of basic licensing in your organization and its access to data. It has to do with a continuity or creating a resilient app estate, and it has to do with, number 3, technical debt elimination. Those are 3 reasons, compelling reasons that stack up on ROI of why you want to make sure that you are on premium licensing. Happy to talk to you more on that if you need. The next one is you need to be deep on AI. And when I say deep, I'm talking about theory. I'm talking about practical application. It needs to permeate every part of your professional and home life, right? I set up my entire house with automation systems. Why? Because I'm intending to AI enable all those automation systems in time. So I try to learn the skills for where I know the tech is going. Why am I getting heavy into Copilot right now? Because agents are going to transform the world. My goal is to work 20 hours a week, but with 40 hours of output. Agents are going to enable that. As soon as I reach 40 hours, I'm going to go for 80 hours output a week, but I'm going to reduce down by 20 hours. I want to get to about 4 hours a week, but 500 hours of output a week. Agents are going to make that possible, right? I'm not worried about them taking my job. I'm absolutely not, because I know that if I understand and can get to work at the scale, by the way, I want to own my own company when I do that. I want someone else profiting off all that. I don't want me to profit off that. I want to be pulling in $100,000 a month, 4 hours work a month. My bank account. Right? Agents is going to make that possible if you can fully understand the power of what it's going to do. And then the third one here is you need to have your deep technical pillars. Say yes, because, I put this up earlier this week as part of my TikToks, and someone came back and they call it the comb. Like you need to have a few technical pillar strengths. I think if you nail AI on now, and you've got good soft skills, good people skills, good engagement skills, you're going to go a super long way in your career. Already out of time? No, I'm not. Okay, so the next thing, unleash your problem solving ability. What? I'm just going to zoom through this because you were just taken through a masterclass of doing this with Hamish. Right? These are the principles of design thinking. Since I applied them, I learned them in the company I was working for in Australia, and I noticed that it totally transformed projects. It created a deep understanding of being able to empathize with what the problem is. Right? The double diamond technique that Hamish showed you is critically important that you apply it to every part of your life, because I see too many people. They say, here's the problem. They go, wow, I've got an app for you. I've got some tech that's going to solve that for you. And they've not understood the problem. When you go to the gate at the airport, you wonder why you can't get a seat on the flight. And they say, sorry, you're on a wait list. There's no seats available. And you ask why to that? Why is not there's no seats available? There's something behind it. Oh, well, we need actually an element at a time before we board new people. And you keep asking these whys and you go deeper and you really blow a problem out and you understand it. And then you go through your convergence thinking and you go and you really get down to defining what the problem is. And then you ideate on it, you prototype and test. I've stopped demoing software to people. Right now I just prototype everything. It allows so much more speed. It gets the message across into people's mind. I have a Power App that they deliver in another session. And one thing about the Power App, I show the whole thing in Figma, all designed in Figma. Doesn't that look amazing? And I say, now watch this. I click my screen and I show the exact same app as a Power App. And people are like, is that still Figma? Because what did all my developers tell me at the start when I put up beautiful apps designed by Figma experts and not Power App experts? They're like, that can't be done. Not a single time has that not been the case. They've all been achievable, all been possible. We're sitting with a large Microsoft customer. When I say large, 70,000 seats of in Power Apps, Power Automate in the US. I was in Vegas at that conference just recently. And he showed me a Power App, and he had one of these flip phones. And I was like, I couldn't tell it was a Power App. And I'm like, that's done right. If I can't tell it's a Power App, you've done a great app. You've made it immersive. Don't force me to use it or think about it. Anyhow, get really good at design thinking. You want to bump your career? Understand. Go take some courses on design thinking. Really make it part of who you are, because it'll give you a framework for actually really solving problems inside your organization, or if you work for a partner, customer problems. Unleash your problem-solving superpowers. Use system thinking. Understand the interconnections within systems, especially in tech projects. What you might think is checking a box because it was on an RFX requirement and it needed to be built in the app, and you haven't understand the implication of that or what it's going to translate to, you're going to create problems. I always say, if someone sat in front of your app in 5 years' time and they were swearing about your app, it's been designed wrong. Something is not right. You've met a requirement, but you haven't thought about the implications of the people going to use this day after day after day. Why is it important? Projects don't exist in silos. One of the companies I work for, called Cloud Lighthouse, we've got a white paper up on the tyranny of the deliverables. The way customers buy, they buy this little project and they're wanting a building built, and they buy this little piece or this little segment. They get funding for this little segment, and it sits and it's siloed, and it has implications around how, how it affects the data estate inside the organization, how it affects the consumability of it, how it affects the security of it. So ask these questions. Why is it important? What are the unintended consequences of the solve one problem but create another scenario? Right? Think about this deeply. Look at the feedback loops that you're putting in place to make sure that you're really understanding the output. And this comes right back to, in design thinking, is you need end users of your system as part of the whole development process, and they need to be quantifying and testing the apps and automations that you build to make sure they're really fit for purpose. Strategy number 4, craft and I can't even pronounce it right. Irresistible personal brand. When I started my career here in New Zealand, in tech that is, because I've had other careers, what I realized back in the day is that New Zealand was the last to get information from the world. And I'm particularly from Microsoft I was talking about. And why I became an MVP back then, because it was the only way to get what was called airlifts back then. Airlifts were running every 3 years, right? And Microsoft showing you what was intended, because we weren't in a cloud world at that time. And I realized the only way I could get access was to become an MVP. So I researched what it took to become an MVP, became an MVP. At that time, I was the only NZBAS MVP in New Zealand. And that really just launched me into a whole new world, because I got access. I got access to the product teams. I went to, in 2012, I got a first awarded. In 2012, as in 3 months later, I went to my first MVP summit. And to go into the offices of folks like what the equivalent of Charles Lamana is now, to go into their office and work and have a cup of coffee and have a beer at the end of the day, guess what it did? It built massive rapport. When I reached out to them from little old New Zealand, they would take my call or my email or whatever it was, because I had built rapport with them. Right? I get hit up all the time. I've got these skill sets. I want a job. And I constantly get this. And I'm like, that's your first encounter with me. You're asking for a job. I'm like, we live in a world where you can absolutely shine digitally, right? If I look you up, I should be able to find you if you're going to have a stellar career in this place. You need to create a branded website. Your LinkedIn profile, your personal website needs to reflect you. Meg and I were just on Wānanga, you call it, last week with Internet New Zealand around the domain space of New Zealand. They actually came to our place to run it. And I live 40 minutes out of Whangarei town on the coast. And they came up there, and what they said is that there's an increase in people buying domains in New Zealand because they've realized that you can't have a social media footprint that's going to last. Because as soon as, you're the product for social media companies, right? As soon as they don't like what you've said, you say something they don't like, they're going to switch you off. And all your followers and identity, gone. Right? You need to have, in my case, NZ365guy.com. Why do I use NZ365guy? Because Mark Smith is boring as and doesn't show up in search engines. If you've got a unique name that will only show you up in a search engine, use your name. That's why I had to use NZ, New Zealand. When I moved to Australia, they asked me, am I going to change it to AU? I said, come on. I'm still a Kiwi. Not going to happen. But make sure consistency, visibility, authenticity, and value is shown in your online brand. When you walk out of a room, the room lighten. Think about what I said there. You heard the saying, when this person walks in the room brightens. When you walk out of the room, does the room brighten? In other words, you are creating a brand no matter what. Seth Godin, I was listening to a podcast that Meg put me on at the start of the week, and he said, if you're an intern at a company and you're the intern that at Friday morning tea time show up with a packet of chocolate biscuits, you're creating a brand. You're going to be known for something, right? It's going to be part of your identity. And so think about that. I'm going to, strategy 4 runs into strategy 5. Build your own website, be brand consistent. And when you build this website, a couple of things. Make it a portfolio website. CVs are dead, right? The data shows that about 75% all recruiters are going to search your name up on social media before you get through to the next round, social media and or the web. So make sure they find you and that you have a portfolio of your work. When I was in high school in New Zealand, I went to Pukekohe High School, and I did a stint in art for a year, and you came out with these art boards, which was your portfolio at the end of the year. You should have a digital equivalent to that right now, which shows a portfolio of all your work. And what should be in that portfolio? Any case study relating to projects that you worked on, put them in there. Grab them off your employer's website. You're involved in that project. Put it in your portfolio. Have a wall of love. I've got a wall of love on my website. I have over 150 people that have shared videos, shared about stuff I've helped them out with. And I tell you, anytime I'm feeling depressed or I feel I suck, okay, have a look at that. Look at this. People do think what I have is valuable or what I say is valuable. So put a wall of love. Have an area where people can see when you've got that employer recommendation level or customer recommendation, put it in your portfolio so future people can see that. They can see consistency over time. Speaking engagements, have your past and future speaking engagements on your website because you're showing history. I interviewed a guy from Microsoft this week in the Fast Track team. And when I looked at his website, it goes back 15 years. I know this guy didn't just wake up yesterday and became super talented. I can see it develop over time. I can see all the speaking sessions from 2015 that he did. There they are. They're all listed out there. He's showing a chronological history of why he's an expert or what he is. He's building credibility by this portfolio website. Now works for Microsoft. Videos. Right? You got to keep saying, you got to get good at video. Get your YouTube channel up and running. Put everything on there. I think I've hit 3,000 videos on my YouTube channel. I don't have a great following on there. That's not my intention for it. It's an archive of everything that I've done. When I left IBM recently, I took all the videos I produced for them and I put them all on my YouTube channel because they're not interested in them, but it's an archive of all the kind of stuff that I've done that I can refer to. It's part of my portfolio over time. And of course, you could blog on your site. Here's another idea, right? And I find blogging is so important because it allows you to articulate your thinking. Writing allows you to clarify your thinking. And so, yeah, number 4, irresistible brand. Let's start this one. I'm meant to be off the stage. Minutes? Cool. We need the QR code again. Oh, you've got that. There's a code up top there. Hopefully that's. Let's go back to it. LinkedIn. Perfect. LinkedIn website. Great.
Your opinion, if you're a consultant and a human,
Yep.
What's more important to promote my personal brand or my business brand?
100% your personal.
You go personal.
100%. I'll give you an exercise to go and do. Go and look at the CEO of Apple and look at how many followers he has, and go and have a look at the Apple account and look how many followers it has.
Yeah.
The CEO has exponentially more followers than the company brand. Your company, by you having a personal brand, get to ride those shirt tails. I had a company, and I'm only going to touch on a second, in New Zealand. It's called Magnetism. I was a founder of Magnetism.
Yay.
My brand was 100% interconnected with that company. And when I left it, I realized I was leaving a whole bunch of my identity associated with that company. And it was from that point on that I separated NZ365 guy out. And no matter what employer I went to, it stood independent. My employers hired me and they were able to leverage that brand for the time that they were employing me, but it didn't change it. And every employment contract I have, most recent one was IBM's, was, you know, we own your life, all your assets, all that. And I was just like, red line through all that. No, you don't. I have all this long before you. And guess what? Nobody reads it. Sign it off. Yeah, good, done. But if they ever came after me for all that, contract is really clear. Not a strategy on here, but read your contracts, your employment contracts, people, and get a red pen out, put red pen through it while they're wanting to hire you. Right? That's the best time to do it. It's the only time. When I went to Australia, I wrote into my contract that I needed to fly to 2 Microsoft US conferences a year. Had it written in as an addendum on my contract. Why? Because they came after me to be employed by their company. They were hungry for me at that point, and they'll kind of do anything. But once the contract's signed, you're now theirs, right? So you don't get to renegotiate after that. I had 2 managers after that. When it came time for me to go to Convergence, it was back in those days, or go to Microsoft MB Summit, who approved this? I'd say to me, I'm like, oh, Appendix A in my employment contract right here. I'm like, we've got a spending freeze. Yeah, Appendix A though says that you agreed in employing me that was in here. And it's been in there ever since. And I always went to those events. Never trust the word of somebody. When your manager, I've had a manager say to me, trust me, I'll look after you. 3 months later, he lost his job. If it's not in the contract, it doesn't exist. Right into your employment contracts. Number 5, leverage the power of community. Nick, do you want to say this? Because I just too fast through.
Te mea nui o te ao he pareta e tangata e tangata.
This is such a powerful whakatoki that has been part of my business or my identity for years. It is absolutely people. Though we're in tech, it is all about people. Right? It's critically important. I am here because of people that helped me, that guided me. I'm not here because I'm technically smart. Right? If you want to do well in this community, it starts with humility. Never be so smart that you're not humble. Never be so smart that you can't pick up the piece of paper you see on your office floor because that's not your job. Never be so senior in the business that you can't get somebody else a cup of tea or a glass of water as you go into a meeting. Those examples I've seen through my career. And I've made decisions on the staff that work for me based on how they operated around the office and their career progression. I've been in scenarios where I've sat down with customers and I've had 3 senior consultants in there, and you would think it was a fight to who had the most credentials. I'm certified in this. I'm da, da, da. And then the next person adds just one more than the previous person as we go around the table. Nobody cares till they know how much you care. Hey, so always stay humble. Schlumberger, one of Microsoft's biggest global partners in the power platform space, over 50,000 power apps deployed inside the organization. The energy company, over 100,000 employees. These 3 I took from them. Humility, hungry to learn, hungry to teach. Those are the 3 core requirements for being an absolute guru in this community that we call Power Platform, Dynamics 365, etc. You need to stay humble. You're never too smart to learn something more. I learned so much around semantic kernel this morning that I have gone out and written, but shoot, I need to get up to speed on that because it's leaving me behind. I learned so much from Nathan and what he does online with his Power FX content. Always adding value. Hungry to learn, hungry to teach. If you add humility and then you're always learning, that always learning mindset, and then you take a mindset of always teaching, guess what teaching does? Teaching gets you to clarify your thinking, because when you put it out there, people can call bullshit on you. Right? Yes, you're wrong, but that's good. That sharpens us. That makes us better in how we engage. Okay, let's keep going here because I know I'm running out of time. Leverage the power of community. That video that you see in the middle is there. I was on the front row of the Vegas conference just recently. just before Charles came onto stage, and you can see 6,000 people in that auditorium. If you're deep in the Power Platform now, you need to be deep in Copilot. You need to be deep in Fabric. Like Fabric is going to be so important to the Power Platform story going forward. I haven't put Purview up there, but you need to know Purview as well, right? Because data, you think Power Platform is an app story? It's not, it's a data story. It's a data orchestration tool. It's so very, very powerful and will continue, but you need to add Fabric to your skill set as well as Copilot. If you don't have your $30 a month subscription for Copilot, somehow get it on your subscription. Offer to pay for it from your employer to get it on it, just so that you get good at it. This will be the best investment, which is about 500 New Zealand dollars a year from memory, that you will spend on your career development. You'll start using it all the time. Will start to transform the way you work, because all of us are going to be cyborgs going forward. It's going to be our human interaction with Copilot assisting us to do a lot of the heavy lifting as we go forward. So attend conferences, meetups, online meetups. I thought I'd rename that to user groups. User groups are so important. They're your chance when they have call for speakers at user groups. Make sure you're at least doing 2 a year, that you're speaking at them, minimum, if this is your space and this is a career that you're dedicating yourself to. Get involved in leading them. When I went to Australia, I set up 6 Dynamics 365 user groups across Australia, 1 in every capital territory. In the 3 years I was there, I grew it to 2,000 members. Because I see that user groups is your stepping stone to be on stage at Ignite and presenting there. You need to take those small steps. You need to get comfortable with presenting, showing or doing your technical demo, getting comfortable with how you land messages. It's going to start in user groups. So extremely important. And online, all the people that have got online and delivered, from across the world today, it's an easy place for you to start. They're always there. Honestly, just be on LinkedIn for 5 minutes and you'll see user groups all around the world saying, can someone speak this month in Florida? Can someone, and you can do it all online or remote, and you can share your idea of the area that you're an expert on. Showcase your expertise. Number 1, learn to write. I am dyslexic. I never knew how to read till I was 12 years old. My mum realized I was about to go to high school and I couldn't read. I hadn't observed it up to that point. And so what? I got a tutor, and the tutor took me with The Apple is Red. The banana, that's at 12 years old how I started reading. I never went to university, but if you want to get good, I hated writing. Right, I can remember at Puki High School, one reason for not having an assignment is that I found out one of my relationships I never knew died. And so I said, sorry, miss, my relationship died. Oh, that's all right. I didn't even know this relationship, but that's the relation. That's how I would do to get out of writing. I hated it. When I was in London, I decided to write 5,000 word blog posts a week. Why? Because I'm not going to, if I know I have a limitation, I'm going to try to address it if I think I can. But what writing does, it helps you get so crisp on your ideas, your opinions, your thinking. You should be writing every day on LinkedIn. You should be writing every day on your blog. And when I say every day, 5 days a week. I'm not saying the weekends, right? Got to have some fun time. And then speaking. If you write well, you should speak well. If I wrote that 7,000 word script, I haven't gone back and read it. In fact, I only read the opening line this morning on how I was going to start this session. And that was just so it was fresh in my mind. This is me in Vegas just the other week. I was in a standing room only session where I talked on the fallacy of free licensing in the Power Platform. Right? It was a great session. Did well, amazing, fun. I couldn't have done that if I hadn't got good at writing, because that presentation I prepared 3 months earlier. I'm not a last minute time person. I'm going to get it done as soon as I know I've got something to get done. This presentation I had finished 3 weeks ago. Right? It was done because that's the way I work. I don't like the pressure of last minute. So find out how to speak. Go to Toastmasters. I used to go to Ellerslie Racecourse there to Toastmasters every Thursday morning. I got good at it. I learned it. I saw people that were scared shitless before getting up on stage. Sorry, their first time. And then later they become brilliant. And you're like, 6 months later, is this the same person? Right? There's no reason. It's a skill. It's a skill. You're not born with it. It's a skill. If you've got fear, that's totally normal, just like the fear of dying. You can get over that as well. navigating the certification maze. Don't just focus on tech certs. You need to nail them. You know, in my career, I've seen people, people use cheat sheets to pass exams and all this kind of stuff. The fact is they're learning. Even if you're doing cheat sheets, you're doing some muscle memory around learning, and you're probably getting, yes, certifications, serious folks are not looking at certification to decide whether you're to employ you. They're more likely going to employ you on your soft skills, right? And your history of what you've done. But add to the certification, soft skill certification. You heard about design thinking. Go out and get a design thinking certification. You've heard about change management. Go out and get ProSci certified. Develop these non-technical certifications. I've always been involved in projects. I had a project management. Do you have a certification? Have you actually formally gone through and done your Scrum certification? Or have you done your PMI or whatever the current flavor is this month for project management? But get skilled in non-technical certs as well. And by the way, you get beyond a point, like I've stopped taking exams because I'm not on the tools anymore. But like part of my certification career, I used to write the exam questions for Microsoft for the Dynamics 365 exams. The PL200 class, I landed a contract to actually create that entire course for Microsoft, and it's still fed out on Microsoft Learn in various bite sizes these days. Every now and again, someone let me on, I heard your voice on Microsoft Learn, talking about Power BI. That happens, right? But get good in it, just bed that down. It's not do you need skills with experience? You need both. Embracing emerging technologies. I've talked about good Copilot. I'm beginning to hurry along. Consider Copilot like a sparring partner. I'm not just using it for content creation. Like when I content create, this is my methodology. I come up with an idea and I'll brainstorm topic ideas. I then put on my phone because I'm not good at writing, right? As in, like, it's not I'm talking about keyboard here. And I'll go out on my property and I'll talk for 30 minutes around how I think about this concept. Then I'll hand it into GPT Whisper, OpenAI Whisper, and I'll have it all transcribed. And then I'll hand that back in and say, now frame out my key points that I covered there. I'll use it to start doing formatting type thing. So it's still very much me, but still very much me working with AI. You've got to realize that if you don't have a data skill set, you need to get a data skill set. Everything around AI is going to be consumption, integration, and working with data. So look at adding that to your skill set. Learn about responsible AI. And still feel in the market this has been brushed over way too much. The EU is just about to implement regulations that are going to fine companies before the end of this year for irresponsible use of AI. So add this to your training. What is responsible AI? What does it mean? How do I build that into everything I do? When I'm giving advice, if you're giving advice, do I really understand that? And then, as I said, agents are going to change the world. Now, in this morning's session, what's your boss name? Martin. Martin said, he talked about the hype cycle. Right now, we're in the start of Microsoft's hype cycle for agents. What they show with McKinsey, when I saw that come out, I rolled my eyes because that's kind of getting there, but it's a long way to go, right? There are 3 types of agents: rule-based agents, if-then type statements, there's semi-autonomous, and there's autonomous. Autonomous means it self-learns, it keeps developing, it gets better over time. It doesn't need human input unless that's a requirement put into the process. But think of when agents get to that point, when Air New Zealand stiff me on a flight or a booking or whatever, I'm going to have my voice agent that's going to listen to my podcast, got my voice print, act on my behalf. It's going to understand all the T's and C's of Air New Zealand, and it's going to call up their contact desk and say, hello, Mark Smith here. Here's my blah, blah, blah number. And it's going to dot point every area that they're in breach and why they owe me. Something I'd never spend my time on, but my personal agent's absolutely going to spend the time doing that type of thing. So to get to know agents super, super well. Number 8. Embrace emerging technologies, right? AI literacy. What if you could raise everybody's AI literacy in your organization by 30%? Transform your organization. We would have to talk about AI use cases. You would be dealing with a plethora of use cases for AI. If you just brought everybody's ability, a rising tide raises all ships, right? If you brought everybody from the cleaner to the CFO, everybody's literacy came up by 30%, your company would be unstoppable. Absolutely. You're good at problem solving. You're good at adoption. Understand how to drive adoption inside your organization. It's going to be part of that 30% increase of AI literacy, and then become super adaptable. Change quickly. Ross on Friends, pivot, right? Get into pivoting. Change. Your career is not going to be what it is today in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years' time. Keep changing. I'm going to buzz through this because I'm late. Master stakeholder and communication skills. I was going to quickly highlight these. You don't communicate to executives the same way you do to end users. You don't communicate with IT the same way you do to executives. Where I see this over and over again. This week I was in an internal call with somebody. I won't say who, and they wanted a demo to an executive, and I was like, why? They're not interested. They're interested in how is this going to make me money, save me money, and send our organization to the stratosphere, right? You've got to understand who you're communicating with and change your communication styles. If you say, I don't feel like talking to executives, find out how to get comfortable, right? It's a learned skill. If you don't feel technical, IT shouldn't be where the AI story has been discussed. Right? I hear you can take a bottom-up approach and a top-down approach. Start at the top, you get a much better success, period, based on all the case studies that have come out around the early wins with Copilot. Master stakeholder communication, active listening. Get really good at it. I know I'm not spending a lot of time on this because we're running out of time or running out of time. Emotional intelligence. If you don't know what this word means, if you don't know what EQ means, go out, get a book, do a course, get good at it. I saw a post on LinkedIn that was forwarded to me this week from somebody in the UK, and it was a classic example of no emotional intelligence. He took credit for everything somebody else did publicly on LinkedIn, and it was just, and this is a senior person in the community, and it had massive implications and backlash. Understand how you make people feel when you communicate. I'm bad at it by default. I had to learn it. Right?
Guilty.
Yeah. But it's really, really important skill. Understand body language. Understand whether people are open to what you're saying. If they're closed down, don't just keep rocking on. There's amount of times I've been in executive meetings where I can see somebody switched off, and you know what? I'll just stop. I'll say, see, it's not resonating with you. Like there's listen, if you're going to be effective in this role, you've got to be able to address elephants in rooms and be comfortable enough in your own skin, you can address them. If you're going to go a long way, understand body language. Number 10, cultivate resilience and adaptability. One thing that I did in London, I went over 365 days of meditating every day. I started meditating at 1 minute. I ended at the end of that year of meditation, I was doing an hour a day of meditation. It transformed my career. Before I got on stage in front of that full room in Vegas, that morning I meditated to just settle myself down, right? It was an important thing because over 25% of the people in that session were global black belts from the Power Platform team in the US that had specifically been told by their managers to come and see the session. So I knew a lot of Microsoft people, and you've seen how I talk. I kind of don't filter too much. And so I had to meditate just to get myself in a state that I felt comfortable. And it was, I tell you, it was one of the best speaking, apart from this session, the best speaking sessions I've done. Seek feedback, right? After the session, I'm going to go to my wife and say, did I suck? What did I do wrong? How could I have improved? She'll say, you swore too much. Be mindful, be flexible, right? I keep doing that. Adaptability, flexibility. Don't get kind of stuck in this is the only way for you. Bonus thing here, critical thinking. Don't believe everything, right? It's so important. There is too much stuff at you where people are paying for the messages that go through your ears and eyeballs. And you think it's news. Somebody's paying for you to consume it. As we go into AI, right, they say by 2026, 95% of all content online will be AI generated. How much more important is it to develop the skills of critical thinking? The great TED talk on critical thinking done by this guy out of Stockholm. He's now deceased, but he was a economist. And he was like, how many of you think the third world are poor? And then he backed up the data to show the spendable income, which he quantified by the ability to take a trip overseas or eat out X number of times a week. And a lot of the countries that we've considered third world are now more economic, as in set up individually, than people in the US. Right? You believe more babies are dying from diseases? Statistically, it's not the fact. And so he goes, but you can't fact check everything. You've got to create something inside here that allows you to go, doesn't sit right with me, right? I don't know that without, being able to do that. And I just look at this, techniques for enhancing critical thinking. Ask open-ended questions. What assumptions have been made? Ask yourself these open-ended questions. What assumptions are being made? What's the evidence for this claim? What are the alternative explanations? I believe we're right now in a race where we had virus scanners. You get your updates every night on virus scanners on your computer. We're going to have the equivalent for deep fake, which will work on our cameras and anything coming across our screen. Because the speed of deep fakeness out there will get so good that you and I won't be able to tell the difference. Our human perceptions won't pick it up. We're going to need technology to actually do it. How many times have you seen photos online? P. Diddy, for example, with some other person, and it's like quickly discredited as that's a Photoshop, pulled together. Okay, finishing up. Challenge your biases. Be clear there. Evaluate information sources. Apply it in all your decision making. Break down problems and explore multiple solutions. I want to close with this. Notice the change on the slide. The word power has changed to power effects. And of course, that person's Nathan Rose. My name is Mark Smith. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. Happy to always connect. And if you want a copy of this presentation, and it's available on my blog right now, the whole entire copy, and go grab it. Thank you.